It feels like an eternity since we've last been to the courthouse. Are you sure you haven't forgotten how to defend, Nick? Do you need a tutorial?
I'm fairly confident in my ability to press and object, thank you very much. And yes, I know how to access the court record. I only lost my memory once, and that was from a fire extinguisher to the head. And I've been keeping my eye on that extinguisher ever since.
So this is the big day, huh? Frankly, I just want this to be over. I've been dying to get some answers. Maybe today someone will finally tell me why I've ended up on this trial.
From what we've gathered, it's mostly because of your skill with explosives. Can you think of any other reasons?
Well, I think I was the last person to see Captain Harvey alive, but the man was going to get transferred the very next day, and all I ever wanted was to get him off my case. I did hate him, that's for sure. But to kill someone out of pure spite? Never.
While I agree that Private November doesn't seem to have it in him, I don't think it'll be good enough defense against Franziska.
The people we met at the regiment were very supportive towards you during yesterday's investigation, Mr. November. Especially Ms. Victoria.
Lieutenant Victoria. She's been really kind to me from the very beginning of my training. You could call me her protege, I guess. She didn't believe in my guilt for a second. I just don't want to believe that this is actually happening, you know? I've tried my best to always be exemplary during my training. I owe it to myself and my family. But to be honest, I'm pretty clumsy when it comes to anything else than rigging explosives. Chopping wood, raising tents, I'm just not hardwired for that stuff, and I get a lot of flack because of it.
Don't worry, Mr. November. We promise to clear your name.
That's right. We're behind you all the way. I've been where you are now, Mike November. All those years ago, in this defendant lobby, I stood accused of a murder I had not committed. My mentor Dean Mia Fey saved my life that day and later took me under her wing. Believe in your client and never let go of what you believe in. This is the creed she taught me. As long as we trust one another, the truth will come to light.
The trial will begin shortly. Will the defendant and his attorney please proceed to the courtroom?
It's time. Let the Phoenix take flight once again.
Court is now in session for the trial of Mike November. I do have to say, Seeing the two of you here again takes me back. Oh!
Meaningless reminiscence has no place in a courtroom, Your Honor.
Oh. Now I remember why those memories were repressed for the most part.
I can see why Francisca would rather not have her past cases again to be brought up again.
That foolish look on your foolish face tells me exactly what you are thinking, Mr. Phoenix Wright. But make no mistake, today will be the day you fall before my whip.
She's really on a warpath today.
By the way, are the prosecution and the defense ready?
The defense is ready, Your Honor.
The prosecution is ready and perfectly prepared, as is to be expected.
Very well then. Before we begin, I have an announcement regarding the proceedings. Since this case is very sensitive in nature, the courtroom doors will be locked until the court is either in recess or adjourned. All witnesses have been prepared beforehand and are present in the courtroom gallery. In case of emergency, you may contact the bailiff to be let out, but you will not be allowed back in. There will be no bathroom breaks. That is all. Miss Von Karma, please give the court your opening statement.
Very well, Your Honor. The victim in this case is Captain Janus Harvey, the head of the Allied Nations Peacekeeping Corps Engineer Company, which is located here in Andalus Bay. 2 days ago, on Monday, 3rd of March, he was found dead in his office after its alarms went off around lunchtime. The cause of his death has initially been determined to be blast-induced barotrauma.
Blast trauma? Are you suggesting that the victim partied himself to death?
Of course not! The victim's death was likely due to overpressure caused by an explosive going off in his office. It's all in the autopsy report.
An explosive? That certainly is a first, but it sounds like a very awful way to go.
If it helps you sleep tonight, Your Honor, the death was instantaneous. The victim did not suffer.
I see. It also reads here that traces of heart medication were found in the body.
The victim was on medication due to a chronic heart condition. It is only natural that traces of his medication would be found.
Huh? I wasn't aware of that.
For obvious reasons, the prosecution cannot submit the murder weapon, since it has vaporized. However, even one look at this photo of the crime scene undeniably proves that an explosion took place in the room.
It certainly looks like it. The court accepts this photo into evidence.
The prosecution will decisively prove that the death of Captain Janus Harvey was the work of Private Mike November, who had the means, opportunity, and motive to commit the crime. The culprit is him, and him alone.
Miss Von Karma sure is confident today. I bet she has a ton of evidence to throw at you.
Well, I'm equally sure that Mr. November didn't do it, so we're even.
Yes, except we don't exactly have a ton of evidence.
We'll just have to roll with the punches and stay sharp as always.
Let us begin. You may call your first witness, Miss Von Karma.
The prosecution calls Dick Gumshoe, the detective in charge of the investigation, to the stand. Witness, state your name and occupation.
What if I tried this combo instead?
Witness.
I was sure I had it this time.
Grumpy!
Yes, sir! I'm Dick Gumshoe, detective and token witness, sir!
The witness bench is not a playpen. You can tinker with your toy later.
Yes, sir! What was that even for?
That one was preemptive. Detective, testify to the court about the details of this murder. And remember, I accept nothing short of perfection.
Understood, sir.
Poor Gumshoe.
He's still trying to figure out the combination lock, it seems.
Alright then. On the day of the murder, the Allied Nations Peacekeeping Regiment was running with bare minimum staff because almost everyone had been mobilized for a large-scale field training camp that very morning. Left behind were the regiment, hospital, and mess hall staff, as well as the military police responsible for guarding the regiment's perimeters and those with special administrative duties. The victim had picked the day for receiving final feedback from his co-workers before his transfer to the Allied Nations Peace Corps headquarters.
That's strange. Why would he pick a day when nobody had the chance to meet him?
Well, the victim wasn't exactly the most popular person in the regiment, Your Honor. In fact, he was pretty much hated by everyone.
Oh, still, I think it's a nice gesture. I couldn't possibly do the same with some of the people I've passed judgment on.
Considering most of them are murderers, I doubt you can hold that against the judge.
After a lot of hard work, police experts managed to salvage the keycard usage logs from the victim's computer. According to these logs for the victim's office door, Captain Harvey entered after the field training camp convoy had left. This was a little before 10 a.m. The logs also show us who visited him and when. The victim had 2 planned meetings before lunch and 1 scheduled afterwards, as we can see from this meeting plan which was recovered from the body.
Both pieces seem very relevant. The court accepts them into evidence. Now, there's something that bothers me about this, however.
What is it, Your Honor?
I do not claim to be an expert on computer-related things by any stretch, but was there no easier way for you to get these logs?
Allow me to help you, Scruffy. No, there was not. Due to limited networking resources, real-time surveillance of the use of keycards is limited to a select few critical areas. Individual offices are, for the most part, not included, and neither was Captain Harvey's office. The keycard usage logs for these lower priority areas are therefore saved on individual computers connected to the readers, where the information is available on demand. This information is automatically transferred to the main security server at midnight to avoid burdening the network. Captain Harvey's computer had not sent the logs forward before it was broken by the explosion. Therefore, the only way the logs could be viewed was by accessing the computer's hard drive.
I'm not sure I fully understood, but I trust the judgment of law enforcement experts. Please continue your testimony, witness.
Oh yeah, where was I? Right. The defendant, who was supposed to be guarding the empty barracks, was noticed to be missing around lunchtime by the regiment doctor, Jason Siegfried. The defendant had left a note by his post saying he was going to visit the victim. The defendant returned to his post 5 minutes later at 12:20. This was confirmed by both Dr. Siegfried and Lieutenant Irene Victoria. 15 minutes later, the alarm sirens of the victim's office went off and the body of the captain was found by the regiment's security forces.
I'm afraid the exact reason for arresting Mr. November still eludes me.
I was just about to get to that.
Then hurry up, Scruffy!
Yes, sir. First of all, we know there was bad blood between the victim and the defendant, which gives us a motive. November had made sure he could stay in the regiment to meet the captain, and the defendant definitely went to the crime scene. The defendant has demonstrated his ability to craft explosives in the past, so he had the means as well. Finally, everyone but the defendant had an alibi.
That sounds much more decisive to me.
Quite.
This testimony may sound decisive, but I think it lacks that certain oomph to it.
You know what to do, Nick. Press him and fish out those contradictions.
Okay then, let's see what we'll catch.
Mr. Wright, you may begin your cross-examination.
First of all, we know there was bad blood between the victim and the defendant, which gives us a motive.
Hold it! You said earlier that everyone in the regiment held a grudge towards Captain Harvey. Why would Mr. November be any more likely a culprit then?
From what we have heard, Captain Harvey was in the habit of hazing privates, and November was his victim of choice.
Hazing?
Yes, basically November was always being mistreated by Harvey. He always got the worst assignments, was denied leaves, and forced to do extra physical training as a warning example to others. But at least he wasn't being whipped all the time. Oh!
Are you insinuating something, Detective?
Not at all, sir. Also, when the other privates left for the field training camp, November had made sure he could stay in the regiment to meet the captain.
Hold Hold it! How can you be so certain of his intentions? He might have genuinely been ill.
Dr. Siegfried examined the defendant on the morning of the day of the murder and testified that there was nothing physically wrong with him.
Oh.
The defendant also left that note at his post saying he was going to see the captain, remember?
Yes, but that may not have been a reason to stay.
Objection! This line of questioning is irrelevant. The important thing is that the defendant, for whatever reason, stayed at the regiment.
Yeah, pal. That. And the defendant definitely went to the crime scene.
Hold it! How did you arrive to this conclusion?
The keycard logs for Harvey's office show that November used his card to enter. A set of his fingerprints was also recovered from the bunker's electricity kill switch.
I see. I can't really start disproving this since I know for a fact that Mike went there.
Your bluffs won't save you this time, Mr. Phoenix Wright.
The defendant has demonstrated his ability to craft explosives in the past, so he had the means as well.
Hold it! Certainly, my client knows how to create explosives. The question is, was it possible for him to do so?
What do you mean, pal?
Tell me, how do you propose my client acquired the explosives needed for the murder?
Well, he must have made it at home during his weekend leave and smuggled it with him into the barracks.
Interesting. I would like this bit to be added to the official testimony.
Very well. Witness, please amend your testimony.
Yes, sir. The defendant must have prepared the explosive at home well in advance.
Objection! Prepared well in advance? That is where you're mistaken.
What?
You claim my client made the explosive during his weekend leave, but that simply can't be true. You see, Private November's weekend leave had been cancelled by none other than Captain Harvey himself, as we can clearly see from this leave application. He was unable to go home during the weekend, and thus, also unable to prepare the explosive for Monday.
Wait a second, you're not getting me that easily this time, pal. Obviously, he had it prepared on the weekend before.
That's impossible as well.
No way!
My client only learned of Captain Harvey's feedback arrangements when he was packing for the camp last Saturday, which means he couldn't possibly have prepared an explosive at home for the purpose of murder.
That is quite an impressive deduction, Mr. Wright.
Way to go, Nick! Things are going our way from the start for once.
Miss Montgomery, you've been awfully quiet. Do you have anything to say?
A foolish fool who butts heads with other fools will only arrive to foolish conclusions. That is what I have to say.
Uh-oh.
Even if we disregard the possibility that Private Mike November had on the previous weekend made explosives intended to be used on the field training camp, which he ended up using as a murder weapon, he could have easily made one in a matter of hours without ever leaving the regiment.
I find that hard to believe, unless you're saying that his personal locker has everything he needs to craft a bomb. You're going to say just that, aren't you?
Exactly.
Way to jinx it, Nick.
We decided to search the defendant's personal locker and found several canisters of various chemicals. The lab test confirmed that Private Mike November's locker has everything required to create rudimentary TNT. We also found bombshells, lengths of fuse, and even radio-controlled detonators. And yes, naturally, his fingerprints are all over them.
Nick, we are sinking fast again! Do something!
Why was I not informed of this?
For the collective safety of everyone in the potential blast area. I believe it has now been firmly established that the defendant had the chance to create the explosive. After all, the barracks were empty, and Private Mike November was the only guard in the area. He had all morning to work on the bomb, and none would be the wiser.
It certainly leaves little room for doubt.
Damn it! This is not good at all.
I am ready to call my next witness, Your Honor.
Hold it! I have yet to ask more about Mr. November's alibi.
Then shouldn't we hear it from the horse's mouth? The prosecution calls the defendant, Private Mike November, to the stand. Unless the defense objects to this?
We don't have much leeway here. Mike was the last person to see Harvey alive, according to the keycard logs. And unless I let him testify, Franziska's going to bring this case to a swift end with her evidence against him. I can't believe Mike didn't tell me about his locker. I fear he might be hiding far worse things. But I'm gonna dig them up either way. The defense has no objections. After all, my client has nothing more to hide, does he?
I'm sorry.
You are in quite the predicament, young man. For your sake, I hope you can testify truthfully.
Roger that, Judge, sir.
Well, don't I feel like a nobleman?
Do not let the witness's flattering distract you. Private Mike November, testify about your actions on the day of the murder.
Very well, ma'am. That morning, I skipped breakfast and went to see Dr. Siegfried at the regiment's hospital instead. In the end, I was put in charge of guarding the empty barracks. I waited until noon before I left for the Iron Chamber. The captain was very much alive when I saw him. I had a brief exchange with Captain Harvey. Then I left. No funny business was involved.
So you did meet the victim on the day of the murder?
Yes, it's true, but that doesn't make me a killer.
Mr. November seems to be doing his best.
Then let's do the same. We've still got a ways to go if we aim to prove he's not guilty.
Mr. Wright, you may cross-examine the witness.
That morning, I skipped breakfast and went to see Dr. Siegfried at the regiment's hospital instead.
Hold it! Why? We know for a fact you weren't ill.
I had to stay behind to take care of some, unfinished business.
Please choose your words more carefully while you're on the stand.
But that business didn't include killing anyone.
What did it include then?
I merely wanted to say my farewells to Harvey.
Stop that, I beg you!
In the end, I was put in charge of guarding the empty barracks.
Hold it! So were you the only person at the barracks?
I sure didn't see anyone else there. It was just me and my shadow.
That really doesn't help make your alibi any less non-existent, I'm afraid.
But I swear I was there the whole time. Well, almost. I waited until noon before I left for the Iron Chamber.
Hold it! Why did you suddenly decide to leave your post? I recall Dr. Siegfried had promised you a meeting time with Captain Harvey later in the afternoon.
That's true. I guess I just got sick of waiting, and that was the earliest moment I could go for. Dr. Siegfried and Sergeant Tennant had their meetings scheduled before lunch, you see. I didn't wish to walk in on them, so I left to see Harvey at 12:05, when nobody else was supposed to be at the Iron Chamber, just in case they were going overtime. I got there at around 12:10.
Mr. Wright, I have a question.
Yes, Your Honor.
This Iron Chamber, is it some sort of rock and roll club?
Not quite, Your Honor. It's the nickname of the victim's office.
Oh, I see. For a while there, I thought the defendant had shamefully abandoned his post to go clubbing.
Your Honor, are you sure your head hasn't met with some clubbing of its own?
The captain was very much alive when I saw him.
Hold it! So when you left Harvey, he was alive?
Yeah, drunk, but alive.
Wait, did you say drunk?
Yep, that's partly why I didn't get much out of him. It was an ugly sight to behold.
Well, this is the first time I've heard of this. It would explain the origins of the spirit stains on the floor, though.
Whatever happened to settling for good old vintage grape juice? Tempura, Rez.
I had a brief exchange with Captain Harvey.
Hold it! What did you talk about?
You know, all the good times we used to have.
Good times? Really?
I was being sarcastic. Either way, what we talked about is not relevant to this case.
How could you say it's not relevant? You stayed in the regiment just so you could meet him.
Look, it's just not relevant. I talked with him for 5 minutes and left.
Guess he's definitely not willing to talk about his reasons in public. And after this chat, you left instantly?
Yes, straight out the door and didn't look back. Good riddance. Come on, I didn't mean it like that.
Well, Mike's not making our work any easier.
When would a client ever? But his poor choice of words are the least of our concerns.
Then I left. No funny business was involved.
Objection! No funny business was involved, you say? We both know you're not telling us everything. For example, Mr. November, why are your fingerprints on the bunker's electricity kill switch?
Astute observation. Well, perhaps it may be that I pulled that switch. And because the next question is likely to be why, I'll tell you. In all honesty, I just wanted to annoy the hell out of Harvey. That's it. I knew that if I pulled the switch, he'd be stuck in the darkness of that bunker of his for a while.
Mr. November, that is not funny at all.
I have to say at the time, it was slightly amusing.
I think that is enough from you now, Mr. November. Miss Von Karma, your thoughts?
Everything the defendant has said so far fits perfectly into the prosecution's case. The only thing left to establish is that it was Private Mike November who, before he left, set the explosive in Captain Harvey's office. And there is a simple way to prove this. Nobody else could have. The only other person who could have potentially created an explosive was the demolitions instructor, Lieutenant Irene Victoria, who did not visit the victim on that day. From the time of her arrival to the regiment in the morning until the alarms went off, she was either watched by surveillance cameras or in the company of another person. Like my case, her alibi is absolutely perfect.
What are we going to do, Nick?
This is what Francisca's strategy has been building up to. If we can discredit her theory, we have a chance to win this.
Let us recap the facts of this case. Captain Janus Harvey's death was caused by a pressure shock wave due to an explosive in his office, the Iron Chamber, where he had been sealed by Private Mike November, whose locker is nothing short of a personal bomb workshop and who also held a grudge towards the victim. The defendant is also the only one without an alibi for the day of the murder. Incontrovertible evidence that he was the last person to see the victim alive. Means, motive, opportunity, a perfect open and shut case.
Well, quite. I don't know what to say.
I know one word you could say, Your Honor, and that is guilty.
I am indeed quite ready to say that. Mr. Wright?
Nick, should I channel my sister?
No need. I know we can do this. Your Honor, before you pass a verdict, the defense would like to challenge Miss Von Karma's perfect theory.
Foolish fool who foolishly tries to fool other foolish fools. But I am no fool. Challenge accepted.
You certainly are insistent on claiming my client was the one to plant the bomb. However, there are two alternative theories to be considered. First of all, isn't it possible that the bomb was planted before the day of the murder?
That is a very valid point, Mr. Wright.
Impossible.
Care to elaborate, Miss Von Karma?
During his last weeks at the regiment, Captain Janus Harvey had grown somewhat paranoid. According to witnesses, he went through his office at least once a day in search of pranks. But more importantly, he checked the keycard logs of his office door without fail each morning. If anyone had entered while he was gone, they would have been caught immediately. Did you really think that I, Francisca Von Karma, would overlook this? Pathetic.
So much for that possibility.
Nick!
Well, at least that possibility was ruled out.
Unless you come up with something, the judge is going to rule us out.
That's right. This is your last chance, Mr. Wright. Miss Von Karma's theory is very solid. If you do not provide the court with a plausible alternative, I will render my verdict without hesitation.
Okay, Phoenix, focus. The only thing I can try to prove right now is either Dr. Siegfried or Staff Sergeant Tennant might be the culprit. But I have no evidence that could back up claims like that. Oh, man. Time to bluff to the extreme. Before I reveal my theory, I would like to hear a detailed description of how the prosecution believes the murder happened.
Your Honor, Mr. Wright is obviously stalling for time.
I agree.
No.
However, for the sake of clarity, would you please explain it again, Miss Von Karma?
Very well. The defendant's motive was revenge. He wanted to kill the victim, who had constantly hazed and humiliated the defendant. The defendant came up with an excuse to stay at the regiment. When alone at the barracks, Private Mike November made the explosive, the murder weapon. He waited until midday, knowing that nobody would be seeing the victim during that time, and then left for the Iron Chamber with the intention of murdering Captain Janus Harvey. According to the keycard logs, the defendant arrived at 12:10. The defendant had a brief argument with the victim before ending it all, by chucking the bomb into his office when he was on his way out. After slamming the heavy electronic door shut, the defendant pulled the electricity kill switch and sealed the fate of Captain Janus Harvey.
Well, Mr. Wright, what do you think?
Mike chucked the bomb into Captain Harvey's office when he was leaving. Does that make sense? No, that can't be how it happened.
Oh? And why not?
If there was an explosion inside the Iron Chamber, the bunker's alarm would go off immediately, wouldn't they? And when did the alarms go off again? At 12:35, 20 minutes after Mike November left the Iron Chamber at 12:15.
Objection! But what if the alarm systems were off at the time? The real reason why Mike November pulled the kill switch was to seal the victim in the Iron Chamber, as well as delay the alarms. The bunker has a pair of auxiliary generators that began restoring power to the systems in case the main power supply is cut off, such as in the case of using the kill switch. This explains the 20-minute delay between the explosion and the alarm. During that time, Private Mike November could have easily made it back to his post before the alarms went off.
That seems like a sound explanation to me. Does the defense want to argue further?
Yes, Your Honor. Because there's a clear contradiction in what Miss Von Karma just said.
Explain yourself at once, Mr. Phoenix Wright.
According to, police investigators, the bunker's auxiliary generators only take up to 10 minutes to power up the alarm systems, not 20. This is a gross oversight from the prosecution.
Ha! The only one guilty of oversight is you, Mr. Phoenix Wright.
What?
I have here a brief report from the regiment's technical services. According to this, the bunker's number 2 auxiliary generator has been out of commission for almost 3 years. With only one generator active, the time to power up the alarm systems effectively doubles from 10 minutes to 20. There are no contradictions to be found here.
Hold on, Nick. That doesn't seem quite right.
I'm open to suggestions if you have any.
Take a look at the evidence. I'm sure you know what I mean.
Why can't you just give me a straight answer, Maya?
That will be doing your job for you. What would Cess think?
Let's see then. Aha! Found it! Objection! Sorry to say, Miss Von Karma, but there's a glaring contradiction of the facts in your theory.
What?
Oh? Please to explain, Mr. Wright.
The problem lies in the number of active generators. According to the bunker blueprints, there are not 2, but 3 auxiliary generators installed. Even if one of the auxiliary generators was out of order, the 2 remaining ones would still be active and make up for the loss of the 2 main generators. In other words, the time until power was restored would still be only 10 minutes.
Way to go, Nick! We're back in action and really going somewhere!
I wish we knew where exactly, though.
When I find the one responsible for briefing me with the technical details, I will flay them. Quick revision then. Mike November must have simply waited and pulled the kill switch again. The power is returned to the alarm systems only when the auxiliary generators are fully online. And resetting the power resets the generator startup process.
But that can't be for 2 reasons. First, only one set of the defendant's fingerprints was found. But more importantly, he met Lieutenant Victoria only 5 minutes later at 12:20. It was only 15 minutes after that when the alarms went off.
This changes nothing!
This changes everything! Everyone's alibi just collapsed with this evidence I produced.
Oh, snap! I did not just hear such foolishness. Take a good hard look at the keycard logs. The defendant's card was the last one to be used! Nobody entered the iron chamber between the defendant leaving and the alarms going off. The generator's power-up time is an irrelevant detail.
Seems your argument was defeated plainly, Nick.
The defendant and Lieutenant Irene Victoria were the only people capable of committing the crime. There is a mountain of evidence that incriminates Private Mike November. And again, the lieutenant's alibi is as perfect as my case. Therefore, the prosecution calls for an end to this trial.
I fully agree with Miss Von Karma. Mr. Wright, you've heard the prosecution's clarification. Now it's time for you to present that alternative theory you talked about earlier. We're all ears. Unless you are bluffing, of course, which would not only be very unfortunate for your client, but also comes with a very hefty penalty.
I can't! What am I supposed to suggest?
Finally, 2 years ago in this very courtroom, you disparaged the name of Von Karma and ruined my perfect record. And now, I have brought you down on your knees before me and cornered you with no chance of escaping. This rush, my revenge will soon be realized. Revenge against you! Revenge against Miles Edgeworth! Revenge against this court system that made a mockery of me! All I need is that 5-letter word. Judge! Announce the victor of this battle to the world!
Phoenix!
I'm sorry. I did everything I could.
It seems the defense has said all it can. This is an extremely clear case. There is very little room for misinterpretation of the facts. The court finds the defendant Mike November.
Objection!
What the?
Huh?
Your Honor, a word, if I may.
You may not! This is my moment of glory! Nobody will ruin it for me!
Who is this woman? Bailiff, escort her back to the gallery!
Mr. Wright, get your chin up and straighten your back. I won't have you looking like that while representing the Allied Nations. And you, Princess Perfect, wipe that nauseatingly smug grin off your face.
What? How dare you! I am Francisca Von Karma, the prodigy, and this is my moment of triumph.
I see nothing but a whip-happy little girl on a power trip.
Ugh! Insolence!
Ouch! Burn! And you, Miss Fang, what are you doing? Nothing, that's what! Ah! You're supposed to keep Mr. Wright in the battle. I don't care how. Fight him if you have to. Give no quarter. And you.
Uh-oh!
Get that beard out of your ears. I can forgive these three for being so young and hot-blooded, but someone of your age and authority should know better and think with their own brains for once.
Bailiff!
I think I see the bailiff cowering away from Lieutenant Victoria's wrath in the corner. Not that I blame him in the least.
For goodness sakes, think outside the box. Even I can see the obvious alternative with just one good eye. That is all. Dismissed! I'm sorry, that was very unbecoming of me. It just slightly annoys me when clearly talented people cannot see the painfully obvious.
Slightly? Francisca's looking purple, and the judge almost had a coronary. Maya's speechless, and I think I might need to change my pants.
I'll be returning to my seat now. Terribly sorry for the disturbance.
Well then, is it safe now?
I think so.
Mr. Wright, I'm sure you would love to explain what she meant.
Yeah, Nick, do it!
Suddenly, the whole courtroom is staring at me. No pressure. An alternative, huh? Was there anyone else at all who could have killed Captain Harvey with an explosive? Think outside of the box.
Mr. Wright, we are waiting anxiously.
As it stands, the killer must have entered the iron chamber that day. But I cannot possibly incriminate Dr. Siegfried or Sergeant Tennant at the moment, even though they went to the crime scene. And if November didn't do it, and Lieutenant Victoria couldn't have done it, that leaves us with... Yes! I have it now! Your Honor, members of the court, I will now present my theory.
No, you will not! Verdict! Verdict! I call for a verdict!
Miss Von Karma, calm down or I will have you in contempt of court. As promised, I will give Mr. Wright his chance. What is your theory?
Very well. There is one more person who could have committed this crime. A person we've overlooked from the very beginning.
Impossible! Who is it?
Captain Janice Harvey.
What?
Mr. Wright, you're proposing the victim killed himself?
Exactly. The defense posits that the murder of Captain Harvey is in fact a suicide.
Phoenix Wright! You! This is ludicrous! There was no suicide note! Nothing that points to suicide! Nothing!
I disagree. Let's think about this. Like Lieutenant Victoria, Captain Harvey is a demolitions expert. This is apparent from the beret he wears. It is more than possible that the victim created the explosive himself. If Mike November had sealed Captain Harvey in the iron chamber with an explosive, the alarm would have gone off no later than 10 minutes after he left. But since the alarms went off 20 minutes after the defendant pulled the kill switch, and nobody entered the iron chamber after that, the logical conclusion is that Captain Harvey took his own life with an explosive.
Objection! Why would he commit suicide? He was getting promoted!
Objection! Can the prosecution decisively rule the possibility out? It explains something the prosecution's theory does not. The time discrepancy. Your Honor, a verdict cannot be passed if we can't tell for sure whether a crime has actually taken place. Are you willing to take the risk of sending an innocent man to death row for a crime that did not happen?
Don't listen to him! The defendant is guilty! Guilty, guilty, guilty!
I believe that. Another day of investigation is more than welcome.
Yes! I can't believe it!
No! My case! What have you done to my perfect case? I will not have it!
Both the defense and the prosecution are to reapproach the investigation from this new angle that has been proposed to clear any doubts about the circumstances of the victim's death.
I hate you, Phoenix Wright!
Stop! Hey! Ow!
That is all for today. Court is adjourned.
Nick!
As I lay there on the cool courtroom floor, the last remnants of my quickly fading consciousness tried their best to ignore the pain and make sense of what just happened. Thanks to Lieutenant Victoria's intervention, we are still in the game. But what on earth drove her to do it? Mike is still hiding his reason for meeting Captain Harvey. Could the meeting have driven Harvey to suicide? We definitely have a lot to look into if we aim to make it tomorrow. And with that thought, I blacked out.
I'm never going to live this down.
Oh, come on. How are we supposed to know they were gonna x-ray all the luggage again?
Honestly, I think the airport security got more freaked out than you did, sir.
My dignity will never be able to recover from this. The only good thing here is that they just left me off with a warning. Oh, I suppose so, anyway, since no one in this airport seems to speak a lick of English.
So, Kay, what's our next plan?
Hold it! Before I even consider going through with another one of your antics, I demand to know what the deal here is. How did you get here?
We're outside the cannon, so everything that is happening is not really happening, and we're sort of trying to make it happen. Get it?
No, not in the slightest.
Okay, let's try this. This airport exists where space is warped and time is bendable. Anything at all can happen.
Then why is it so difficult for me to get a damn plane ticket?
It's all part of the script, sir.
Oh, now you've lost me again.
Oh, that's for us! I'll get it!
I still have no idea who she is.
Sorry, sir, I cannot tell you. That'd be breaking the main timeline.
Whatever the two of you are doing right now isn't.
Just try not to think too much about it. I hope the universe won't notice.
So, I'm back. I'm supposed to give you this, Mr. Edgeworth.
A plane ticket? Where did you get this?
That's not really important. Gummy, you might want to take a few steps back and close your eyes.
Uh-oh. It's in this interlude, isn't it?
Why are you two acting so funny all of a sudden?
Sorry, Mr. Edgeworth. It's only gonna sting once. Hopefully.
What on earth are you on about?
I can't watch.
I don't like the sound of this. At all.
3, 2, 1.
Wake up! We haven't got all day here.
I feel like I was just hit by a truck.
Close enough. You were crushed under a conveniently placed piano, but the end result's the same. You're dead.
Excuse me? I'm right here.
And whose legs are those dangling from underneath the piano?
I guess I cannot argue with that.
You seem awfully calm for a dead guy.
By now, I've learned to take reality with a grain of salt. I refuse to die in such a cartoony fashion. So I presume you're here to save my life?
Spot on. Now let's rewind time and go back a few moments before your death. Alright, let's get to work. This should be a piece of cake.
Gummy, you might want to take a few steps back and close your eyes.
Uh-oh. It's in this interlude, isn't it?
Why are you two acting so funny all of a sudden?
Sorry, Mr. Edgeworth. It's only gonna sting once. Hopefully.
What on earth are you on about?
I can't watch.
I don't like the sound of this. At all. Do something! I don't want to see myself die in such an undignified way!
Just hold on. This is only a question of timing.
3, 2, 1.
And trick! My work here is done.
Mr. Edgeworth, are you okay?
I am considerably better. Now that your attempt on my life was unsuccessful.
Oh, please. How could we possibly have known that the inconspicuous-looking piano conveniently hanging above you was going to fall?
You were counting down the seconds till my death!
I admit nothing. I'm just glad to see you're in one piece.
At least I have the tickets now. Wait, where are they?
I'm afraid they were crushed under that piano, sir.
Oh, universe, why do you hate me so?
This is all happening because the fans love you, though.
It's all part of the plan to get you home. Honest.
I'm going to need a cup of tea.
Now then, dear viewers, I
LordIban may have been able to save Edgeworth here, but it's gonna take your help to get Ace Attorney Investigations 2, and the future games in the series localized. Don't let us down. Join the good fight at Capcom Unity.